Hello there, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the Australian federal election, and I'm joined by a real-life, actual Australian. Hello there, AngryAussie.
Hello, Mr. Logan. How are you?
Very well, yes, very well. It's slightly strange to see you with sunlight behind you. That's
Yes,
unusual.
yes.
Mimsy,
Mimsy's
yes.
behind me. That's what we like to
Early
see.
Mimsy sighting's always good.
Yeah, no, she likes the attention. She comes in the room and she knows she can come and get scratches. So yeah, that's always good.
Awesome. So, I suppose down to the business of the day.
Yeah.
Well, before we even get into that, I don't know if there's anyone who isn't watching your material. Firstly, what the fuck are you even doing with your life? Seriously. But for maybe
Right.
those who don't know, tell us about you.
Well, yes, I have the YouTube channel, and as the name suggests, Angry Aussie. I like to shout a bit when I do stuff, and I tend to talk a lot about issues of the day and the way the world's gone in the last 10 years. It gets more and more political. I don't talk solely about political things, but I mean, the way the world is, that's one of the biggest and easiest things to get angry about, basically.
Okay.
So yeah,
Well,
that's me.
well, yeah, absolutely. And everyone should be. I mean, if you're not subscribed already, go and subscribe. I'm not asking you nicely. I'm telling you, it's fucking happening. People, just
Yeah.
deal with it. Anyway, so to the business of the day.
Yeah.
Yes, not great election results, were they?
No, and also just phenomenally unexpected. I mean, I'd been saying, everyone had been saying for about a year, the Conservative coalition were gone for all money. Like, the result makes no sense on any level apart from, turns out the Murdoch media empire really are quite powerful.
Yes, indeed, and we'll get onto that, I suppose. But for anyone who doesn't know, I'll give you a brief outline of what actually happened. The Liberal/National coalition. Now, again, Liberal means Conservative in Australia. Just go with it, people. They won 78 seats, giving the incumbent Prime Minister Scott Morrison a majority of 3 seats, I believe, which is still
Yeah,
pretty
70.
razor thin, but it's a majority, so he gets to remain Prime Minister.
Yes.
Yes, and yeah, the Labour Party, which really were expected to win, gained only 67 seats, even though most polls had them down to win a majority, which is the left in a nutshell, I suppose. And in the wake of the loss, Labour leader Bill Shorten stepped down, and there will be a leadership contest and hopefully a bit of soul searching, frankly. Yes, the election, whilst tumultuous, saw very little actual change in the numbers. There was essentially a simple 2-seat swing from Labour to the Conservative coalition, which it's an odd combination of both, like I say, tumultuous and not a lot happened. If you just look at it without the context around it, which is sort of fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. A slim win by the government is regarded as a phenomenal tsunami of success because they're expected to get smashed. So a
Yeah,
slim win is just an over-the-top positive result.
yeah. I mean, I believe your religious fanatic Prime Minister described it as a miracle.
See, and that's a scary word for him. For those who don't know, our Prime Minister is a member of one of those truly disturbing evangelical happy clapper churches. And, you know, several of the ones he's been associated with, much like the Catholic Church, have had very high profile, like the actual heads of the church implicated in abuse scandals and cover up of abuse, but also it's just that more than mildly unsettling evangelical thing. When he says miracle win, like in one person's mouth, that's quite innocent, but in his mouth, it's kind of like, I don't know, like Ted Bundy saying to you, "I've got a killer idea," and you go, wait, how do you mean that? Because Morrison now, I think he genuinely believes he's been selected by God, which is freaky and disturbing.
Well, yes, I mean, and Rupert Murdoch thinks he's selected by God because Rupert Murdoch thinks Rupert Murdoch is God. So
yeah,
yes,
there is that too. Yes, yeah. So there is an element to Morrison and his creepy evangelical religion that is really troubling, because when someone literally believes they are leading by divine right, that's when bad shit happens.
yeah. You look at George W. Bush for a prime example of that. Yes.
Well, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
you look at like Trump, and while the absolutely evil evangelicals in the US aggressively support him because he'll do whatever he wants, Trump clearly thinks the evangelicals are idiots, and he's just playing his whole ego games. So Trump doesn't believe he was selected by God. He's just an arsehole. But yeah, someone who thinks God is on their side. Oh.
Yeah. It's a sidetrack, but I'm not entirely convinced that Trump believes in a God. I've not seen it. Was that, sorry?
I think Trump's an atheist. You look at his history, he's never gone to church, he's never been a member of a church. It just goes to show how all evangelicals in America are interested in is power, because they'll do someone who, by their own internal definitions, Trump's basically the Antichrist. But they'll court him because it gives them power. I think Trump's an atheist. But Morrison is scary. When he starts using words like miracle, there's an undertone to that is really disturbing.
Indeed. And just to round off the results as we have them currently, there were 40 of the 75 Senate seats, which is obviously the upper chamber of the Australian Parliament, that were up for grabs. And so far, I believe 25 have been declared, 13 for the Conservatives, 12 for Labour, and 15 are still in doubt, which is odd because it's been several days now. Australia saw yourselves out. And I quite like that in Australia the voting's compulsory, isn't it? So you often get quite a lot of spoiled ballots. The spoiled ballots apparently account for 5.7% of the overall vote,
which clearly could have tipped the election, with 5% of the votes overall being invalid if those people had made the effort. But I mean, again, you look at how the votes went, and I think some people are clutching at straws like, oh, Labor could have won if those 5% voted for Labor. No, I tend to think those 5%, if they were forced to vote, I don't know, I think it would have stayed statistically consistent, and I think we'd still be looking at a Conservative government.
Well, exactly, yeah. I mean, ultimately, if someone's spoiling their ballot, it's because there is no one there they want to vote for, right? So it's down to the parties for not actually attracting their vote. But I quite like the statistical tidbit that the spoiled ballots actually got more votes than Pauline Hanson's One Nation Nazi Party.
Yeah, that was. If we're looking for small saving graces from this election, that One Nation did not do well. Predictably, that actual Nazi Fraser Anning was out. That was quite predictable. And weird in the lower house, Clive Palmer, who was this idiot egotist who, in a way that was very sad to me, modeled himself as a third-rate Donald Trump wannabe. He used the slogan, make Australia great. He put his own money in, actually probably more like his shareholders' money, $80 million.
Hang on, I just want to. So his slogan was "Make Australia great."
Yes, he didn't say again. No, he didn't say again.
So Australia's always been shit, but I'm going to make it not shit.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
Well,
I mean, it's not got the same snap to it as an idea, really. American
no,
unacceptable, Australian unexceptionalism. Yeah, okay.
yeah, no, and that was like it was quite pathetic how shabby and impersonator of Trump he was, and he had these billboards everywhere with honestly embarrassingly photoshopped pictures. Like you just look at them and go, "Dude, you don't look like that," you know.
What
You're
I
you're
thought
like,
the photos of him with Abraham Lincoln were good. That wasn't photoshopped. That was
no,
obviously
no,
real.
no, that was real. They're close personal friends, but
Indeed.
he didn't win a single seat. But what he's claimed afterwards is it was all a plot just to make sure Labor didn't get in, because he gave disillusioned Conservative voters someone to vote for, not the major parties. But then he just channeled all the preferences straight back. Personally, I think that's some bullshit after the fact justification for behavior. Like you can look at it and go, well, okay, that did actually happen. Like his preferences went straight back to the Conservatives. Someone wants attention. But I don't think that was his plan. I think he's just a rampant egotist. And after he completely failed, he came up with a plan B, like, oh no, I was never going to get in. I was just tricking people into having their votes go straight back to the Conservatives. I don't think he planned it. I think that's an egotist covering his tracks, quite honestly.
So yeah, so like a Donald Trump, basically. Don't never
Yeah.
admit to a mistake or a failure. Yeah, classic.
Of course, Trump's biggest mistake was winning the election. I
Yeah,
mean, you can tell he didn't want to.
yeah. He wants the kudos of being president without actually having to do anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like if you now look at three big, and honestly, okay, the Australian election is not big on the world stage; it's just big to Australians. But you look at the unexpected results, flying in the face of the polls, the Trump election, Brexit, and this Australian election. I think like the only difference between the three is when I look at Trump and when I look at Farage and the other liars who made themselves the mouthpieces of the Brexit campaign, they didn't want to win. Neither of them wanted to win. They just wanted to raise their profile and they just wanted to cash in. Scott Morrison wanted to win. He just didn't think he was going to. But yeah, no one trusts polls now, hopefully.
yeah, which isn't great, really. I mean, I've begun to wonder whether a lot of right wing people, as I think they should be, slightly ashamed of their beliefs, are lying to pollsters, because this is like
There,
a consistent pattern now across the sort of Anglosphere, where this keeps happening.
and I know some people said that in the lead up to the marriage equality vote in Australia, when all the polls said this has significant majority support, they were saying, oh, I think a lot of the homophobes are actually embarrassed to answer survey questions and say they oppose it. But then the vote came through and it was a really convincing win. But yeah, that theory has been put about quite a bit. People with reactionary views, when asked, is this your view, go, no.
Yeah, it's very strange. Well, actually, not strange at all, I suppose. But there we go. Anyways, right. So, what were the main themes, the campaigning issues of the day? Because I mean, immigration wasn't as big as it has been in previous elections. I
No,
know that.
no, all the Conservatives did was like, woo, Labor has scary taxes. Woo, that was literally all they did. Now in Queensland, which I think it was almost a clean sweep for Conservative candidates in Queensland. Apparently the big issue there was the big coal mine known as the Adani coal mine that apparently a lot of Queenslanders think is something they should have, and that's because they've been lied to about the economic value of it. And there's a theory that Queenslanders didn't like people from other states telling them you can't have a big, disgusting, polluting coal mine because that's shit. What's wrong with you? And so there was a reactionary vote in Queensland along those lines. But the government did nothing apart from Labor has scary taxes, and it's like there's this ridiculous tax rort. It's slightly complicated to explain. It's about unfranked credits on shareholdings, and there's one thing where someone gets their dividends from their shareholdings and they don't pay tax on that if the company's already paid tax on that. But then John Howard years ago weirdly doubled down on it and said, I'm actually going to give these people a bonus. So it's like this tiny, tiny percentage of the population. To be affected by this as a retiree, you literally had to have well in excess of $1 million of tax-free assets. And it wasn't a tax refund. It was just the government going, here, have some tens of thousands of dollars extra for no good reason. And this is going to end up costing tens of billions of dollars. But they turned it into a scare campaign, something that affected a tiny percentage of the richest people around. And they managed to make the general populace think that's a bad idea. So it's just basically saying, ooh, Labor have taxes, Labor have taxes. And that was all they said. And it worked.
Yes, well, clearly it did, yeah. Why do you think it is, though, with the immigration thing? Because that's, given that they didn't think they were going to win, and that's something that even in elections where they thought they were going to win, they still played that card, because unfortunately, well, Australia is probably one of the most comfortable with its own racism countries in the world, basically.
Oh, it's a very lazy, laid-back racism here. It's like, no, we don't actually lynch people. We just treat everyone who's not us like shit.
And it's a lot easier because it's out of sight, out of mind when it's in fucking Nauru or Papua New Guinea or whatever.
I cannot believe that these offshore torture camps are just a thing. And it's just like, no, these people fled from the worst situations in the world that our foreign policy either created or contributed to. And it is the stated policy of both parties. No one in the major parties can hide from this. It's the stated policy to make their experience here worse than the goddamn war zone they fled from. It's torture. The UN keeps saying, I think this qualifies as a crime against humanity.
Yes. Well, they're concentration camps. I don't know how else to describe them. They're concentration camps. And like you say, didn't come up at all during the election, really. Those mad.
Well,
absolutely.
I think part of that may have been there's a state election here in the state where I live, Victoria, where the Conservatives were in opposition, and they went super hard with racism, like really filthy, ugly, racist lies. They were the ones perpetuating this idea, Melbourne has an out of control African gang problem, which is categorically untrue. And it failed. Like the sitting Labor government stuck to their policies. They said, hey, you voted for us because we promised to deliver these things, these policies, this infrastructure. We did it. We're going to continue to do it. We're not going to blink in the face of this racist bullshit. And it went really quite badly for Libs. Like Labor increased their majority. So I think that was probably a big factor in the federal party going, oh, let's not push the racism button again. That actually didn't work for us.
Yeah. Which, well, I would like to think that's like a long-term trend where they won't do that, but yeah, maybe a blip. Yeah. Anyway, so you alluded to it there. There's a certain north-south split in the country, it seems to me, having looked at the map. Where your own state and similar areas are reasonably progressive. And then you've got... I don't want to be too rude, by the way, because I've never been to anywhere in Australia, but what the fuck is going on in Queensland?
Queensland, our Florida, our Alabama, whatever you... But look, honestly, I'm going to put a little asterisk on this. A lot of people, lefties, just piled on like, fuck you, Queensland. And yes, Queensland just was this big sweep for Conservatives. But in the lead up to the election, where I, like everyone else, was quite confident the government was going to be turfed out, I said it was always possible for them to win, but it was incredibly unlikely because so many things had to go in the way. They had to do better in Queensland than expected. They ended up doing much better in Queensland than expected, but they had to do better in New South Wales than expected, and they did do slightly better. They had to do better in Victoria than expected, and they did do slightly better. Had to do better in Western Australia, and they did. Had to do better in Tasmania, and they did. Basically, all the unlikely things that had to happen for them to win all happened. Like, yes, okay, there was this huge sweep of seats went to the Conservatives in Queensland, but if Labor had won, 2 more seats in New South Wales, 2 more seats in Victoria, 2 more seats in Western Australia, 2 more seats in Tasmania, Labor would have got in with a slim majority, but they would have got in. So this whole blaming Queensland for everything is a bit rich when the Liberals and Nationals did at least a little bit better than expected in basically every state. So
yeah, and I think that leads us on, because it's obviously it's easy to say what did the winners do to allow them to win, without focusing too much on what the losers did or didn't do.
Oh, okay.
So
yes.
So they were, when we talked, whenever the fuck it was, earlier this year, it looked like Labour were going to absolutely piss it. Now, I'm never confident the left are going to win comfortably in anything ever. So I was like, okay, well, if they can win, just get in, just get rid of them, just even if it's fucking 1 seat majority, I don't care. But they were looking like they were going to really sweep the board. So what did they do that fucked it all up?
Look, and this again, I feel vindicated a bit that I was on record. I have never been a supporter of Bill Shorten, who was the Labor leader. I don't think he deserved to be Labor leader. He was too key a figure in the knifing of Kevin Rudd and then the follow-up knifing of Julia Gillard. The idea of him being instrumental in both of those and then being rewarded with the leadership was bullshit. And he spent his entire 6-7 years in opposition. The sum total of his campaigning, in my mind, was I'm not that guy. He seemed too scared to make any bold policy announcements and to try and inspire people. I feel like he never tried to inspire people to vote Labor. He just tried to, if I keep my head down, the Liberals are doing a really good job at shooting themselves in the foot, which they were. And it looked like a winning strategy, but I was always annoyed by it. It's like, it's not good enough. It's not good enough to be not that dickhead over there. Tell people who you actually are. Tell people what you stand for, what you're going to do. Inspire people. Make people think they're going to gain something by voting for you. And I don't feel like he ever did that. There were 1 or 2 moments in the election campaign that were positive. I mean, at least Labor had actual policies. Like I said, all the Libs just kept saying is, Labor have scary taxes. That was the sum total of their campaign. At least Labor had some actual policies. But I think Shorten did nothing to earn his role. It's like he was just going to fall into the position of Prime Minister. And it looked like a winning strategy, but in the end, apparently not. So
what would you have preferred him to have done? Not, I mean, obviously to be inspiring, but in terms of policy or approach, what could he have done differently?
Something direct and aggressive about climate change, something direct and aggressive about workers' rights. I mean, the next 3 years, if you are not at least like middle-aged, straight, white guy with money, you're in serious trouble. If you're young, old, sick, any sort of disability, any divergent from being a straight white male, stuff's going to go against you. And like penalty rates will be a thing of the past. Workers' rights are going to be destroyed.
Can you explain penalty rates for us?
Okay. Penalty rates, and this mostly affects casual workers, but it's like, okay, Monday 9 to 5 is normal work hours. That's normal. Now, if you work outside those hours, traditionally you had a loading, and you got paid extra to work nights. You got paid extra to work weekends. This was very big, obviously, in hospitality, cafes, bars, restaurants, that type of thing. Not only those fields, but particularly those fields. So now you're staring down the barrel of, if you work sort of midnight to 6 a.m. on a Sunday night, you're not getting paid any more than someone who works 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. And all sorts of other rights are going to end up being undermined, because they've made it clear what their targets are. Like no minimum hours for a shift if you're a casual. Basically, the boss rings you up and says, come in for an hour or you're fired. Or the boss said, yeah, come in for your 4, 6, 8 hour shift, but you're working retail or whatever and it's not busy. And the boss says, oh, okay, the busy hour is over, go home now and I'm only paying you for that hour. And if you complain, you're fired, because they're going to do their best to get rid of unions. I mean, and this is not solely the Conservatives' fault, but wages have been stagnant for decades, while productivity and company profits have gone up. The actual wages of the people who create that productivity have been completely stagnant.
Yeah, I think that's not just Australia. I think that's all across certainly the Western world. And I know technically Australia's not in the Western Hemisphere, but it's the Australia and New Zealand are honorary Western nations.
Yeah. So it is basically capitalism has degenerated into crony capitalism, and I feel like the billionaires at the top have forgotten the lessons of history and what happens if you actually exploit people for far too long. Like, growth industry becomes guillotines. So
exactly. Yeah, it would be worth them maybe giving a few concessions. It's not too much to ask, I don't think. But anyway, so one thing I did find quite interesting, given, like you say, about the Adani mine and the fact that mining is a fairly significant part of Australia's economy, is the fact that climate change became something of an issue during the campaign, didn't it?
Apparently, the vote in the end doesn't support that, but the discourse in public and in the media suggested that people were concerned about climate change. The vote suggests otherwise.
Yeah, the Australian people were given a pretty reasonable choice between frying the planet and not, and went with frying the planet, which is great. I mean, it's not as if the Great Barrier Reef's literally being bleached by the fucking second or anything.
And that's that like a thing people point out, like this Adani mine, which is owned by an Indian company, that the more you hear about them, the shiftier they sound. Its contribution to the Australian economy is starting to look pretty infinitesimal, because they're just going to rip whatever they can out and take profits offshore. Like the Barrier Reef generates more for the Australian economy than this mine's going to, and this mine's going to be one of the things that contributes to killing the Barrier Reef. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and I saw that quite a lot of it's going to be automated anyway, so the number of jobs created by it is going to be fucking tiny, it would appear.
Oh, less than a tenth of what they were claiming, and it's, again, the profits. If and this is a huge if this mine can even be profitable, they're just going to be ripped out of the country. That's not going to contribute to the economy. I mean, there are stories of people saying like, you know, now the Adani mine's saying like, oh, you know, we can only do this if you give us like free water and free power and whatnot. So not only do they want to this mine, they're apparently asking for billions of dollars in subsidies. And it's just like, what in God's name is going on? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. Absolutely. So where do you see, because they're given 3-year terms, isn't it? That's quite small in of itself. But where do you see the next 3 years going then overall?
Look, yeah, one of those things where the more I think about it, the more disturbing it gets. I mean, like I said, on simple things, I think workers' rights are going to be screwed. I think we are probably going to see a big swing up in industrial action because another funny thing that happened in the lead up, half a dozen senior members of the government who were quite convinced they were going to lose the election resigned, and they were more on the moderate side. So the hands on the steering wheel now are much more of the hardline conservatives. So I think no one's been talking about it, but I think we're going to see really significant attacks on workers' rights. We're obviously going to get no action on climate change whatsoever. So a lot more environmental destruction, life much shittier for workers. And just as a side product, I think we're going to get a real uptick in bigoted violence. If you're not a straight white male, expect to randomly cop abuse and possibly violence in the street. We're going to see a lot more racist violence, homophobic violence, transphobic violence, misogynist violence. And it's going to be because, you know, apparently the forces of extreme conservatism won. People are just going to feel validated in abusing anyone that they think is the enemy. So
yeah, and that's another way in which I think this result can be tied in to an extent. Obviously, they're all different, but to an extent with Brexit and with Trump, is that when that kind of right wing, like you said, like hardline conservatism is seen to be victorious, however slim the majority may have been, or in Trump's case, obviously a minority of people voted for it, but whatever. It emboldens people who are bigoted pieces of shit into behaving in incredibly uncivil ways.
Yeah, and even, you know, I think Trump, for example, does actively encourage these pieces of shit. I don't think the Australian government is going to vocally encourage these arseholes. I just think they're going to, in their own head, decide this is a vindication of their bigotry, and they're going to. There's going to be a really sharp uptick in the reports of people copping abuse and violence in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and in terms of like I said, the hardline conservative thing, one of their campaign pledges was that a massive increase in spending for religious schools.
Oh yeah, that is definitely going to happen. State schools are going to suffer. The private schools are going to. Oh yeah, look, government funding. It's just going to be, the public service is going to be cut. The ABC is going to be cut. The private schools are going to get huge boosts in funding. Rich people are going to get massive fucking tax cuts, which will be paid for by cutting the public service, cutting infrastructure, cutting the ABC. It's going to be ugly. And if something happens, like, I mean, our housing market is teetering on collapsing because it's in a ridiculous bubble. like when the global financial crisis happened, the then Labor government went, okay, we have to keep the economy turning over, and they injected a huge amount of funding into building projects. Like, hey, community and school building stuff. We're gonna all the schools get to build new classrooms, community centres, all this shit, and it kept people in work. And so Australia weathered the global financial crisis much better than other Western economies. And you get like the Conservatives go, oh, Labor spends on health and education and infrastructure. The Conservatives spend on tax cuts for their bloody rich mates. If there is a severe economic downturn in the next 3 years, we're fucked. I mean, the Liberals won't care. People out of work, people going out in the street, that's life. People are just going to be thrown to the wolves if there's a severe economic downturn in the next 3 years. That will be really ugly.
Yes. Potentially grim times ahead. I wish, like, I've been trying to reassure Australian friends, it's not necessarily the end of the world and all the rest of it, but it kind of seems like the end of the world for some people, which is understandable. It's grim times, no doubt.
Yeah. Oh, and as I noticed in the chat, Luke saying that they'll cut welfare. There's this neat bit of class warfare that they've been indulging with. The people on benefits get what's called a cashless benefit card. So you don't actually get money in your bank account. There's a debit card, and you can only use it in certain ways. Like, they're demeaning you to the point that they're saying, like, yeah, well, not only are you getting government support, we think you're a scumbag, and we need to control your life and say you can only spend the money here, here, and here. So we're going to see a lot of that sort of crap.
Yeah, that's pretty humiliating in many respects. That's really spot.
Yeah, and oh my god, the DSS, the government body that manages unemployment and sickness benefits, they've been horrible for a number of years, and they're just going to get worse. There's the thing people have been calling robo-debt, robocalling. It's a very flawed program, as in computer program, ran an algorithm on welfare recipients and decided X number of people had been overpaid. And these are people on welfare payments. These are people who don't have spare money. And then they were just getting these debt notices that said, you owe this much, this many $100, this many $1,000. And they'd get these incredibly aggressive things like, we're going to destroy you, take away your payments unless you pay this back. And in a really significant number of cases, these calculations have been proven to be wrong. But even if they were right, just the incredibly aggressive way they went after people who have no defense, basically. Like, there was just, a lot of people died, basically. It's just like, and that shit's just going to get worse. Just like saying, all right, while we funnel literally tens of billions of dollars to the people who need it least in tax breaks, we are going to try and destroy the lives of people who are getting a couple $100 a week in benefits. It's psychotic.
Yeah, it seems conservatism is the same the world over, because I was literally ranting about that today, about my own shitty conservative government. Brilliant. Yes, but before we stray away, where do you see what do you want to see now from the Labour Party? Because obviously, as mentioned, Bill Shorten's now stepped down, or he's going to step down. The one name I did see thrown into the ring was a guy called Anthony Albanese, who lost to Shorten in the last leadership election. So you have to think to yourself, if you're less inspiring than the guy who was so uninspiring he fucked up a massive poll lead, is that great? Does that inspire confidence? I don't know.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. There was basically nobody else. Albanese was an old school lefty, and he's been in Parliament for a long time. Like, he was in Parliament back when Hawke and Keating were running things, and Hawke and Keating were from the right wing of the Labor Party. Like, you know, they were very much into the neoliberalism of the market. They were very pro-union and pro-worker and you know, vocally anti-racist and a couple of other good things, but they were very much on the neoliberal side. And Albanese was in there. I'll just throw out, his name gets pronounced lots of different ways and he answers to all of them. If someone says Anthony Albanese, he doesn't correct it. If you say Albanese, he doesn't correct you. If you say Albanese, he doesn't correct you. If you say Albanese, so he basically, actually, I don't know how you pronounce his name because he answers to all of them. But he was a junior MP and a lefty, and Keating used to rag on him because in party room arguments, Albanese would say, "We need to do this, this, this," and Keating would say, "Shut up, dickhead." And Albanese's first pronouncement was like, we have to be nicer to big business or something. It's like his first lesson from the election was, "Oh, Labor needs to bootlick a bit more." It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but it seems to me rather that the Labour Party were rather too dead set on being as centrist as they could possibly be.
Yeah. And I'm incredibly biased, but I think they should go, even just be like Hawke and Keating. Just go like, we're going to have this policy about workers' rights because this is the right thing to do. You've got to give people a decent amount of rights. And apparently, you know, people are shallow. You have to sell ideas to them, but actually have strong policies, have committed policies, and tell them. Say to people, the reason I'm doing this is good for you, and this is why this is good for you. And when I look around the world, well, anyway, I'm going to limit this to the English-speaking world because that's what I'm more familiar with. I just consistently see the left or centrist party being weak as piss and making concessions all the time, and the right-wing conservative parties just, you know, doing this alpha male run roughshod over everyone and fuck anyone who doesn't like it. And you look at that and go, God, I can kind of understand why some people don't feel inspired by the, you know, the center left party, because they come across as so goddamn weak. And the right wing party, while being psychotic, at least, you know, you can kind of feel strong supporting them because they make strong statements and they bulldoze through things and they make you feel like, yeah, you know, I've got some pride in this, even if it's psychotic what they're doing. I see that in Labor here, Labor in the UK, the Democrats in the US. It's easy to look at them and go, Jesus, they're weak as piss.
Yes, the left needs to stop apologising for existing and actually just fucking state some shit. Because I don't mind, well, obviously I do mind losing an election, but I don't mind so much. Like, it doesn't hurt as much losing an election knowing you actually stood on a platform that meant something.
Yeah, and Labor here did not do, like, they did more than the government, quite honestly. But yeah, I'd been saying for a while, Shorten's entire shtick was, I'm not that guy. And it looked like a winning plan. Turned out not to be. But yeah, I agree with you. I would have felt better if Labor had put out a really strong platform and said, we're doing this, this, and this, because look, it's the right thing to do, and you're going to gain from this, this, and this is what we stand for. And if they got voted down after standing for something, yeah, I'd be to the people voting, well, fuck you all for voting against decent policies. But people didn't vote against Labor policy at all because there was no policy strong enough. It's just like the inherent conservatism, and it's a very sort of lazy conservatism in Australia. I don't, as in the classical, I don't like change. The Liberals and their Murdoch mouthpieces just kept screaming tax, and that was apparently effective.
Yes, indeed. But let's not end on a. Well, let's not end our discussion of Australia anyway on the. Yes, a couple of positives. We mentioned it briefly. The egged one was kicked the fuck out.
Yes.
Yes. The now former senator for Queensland, Fraser Anning. Although I didn't realise his real first name was actually William. There we go. I learned something from Wikipedia. Anyway, yes. So, what do you want to tell everyone briefly about the amazing record of William Fraser Anning?
Okay, well, this was weird as crap because, the way Australian Senate seats work, if there's a party ticket, and then someone leaves the Senate for whatever reason, like they resign because they're sick, or they die, or they're found to be ineligible to be in the Senate. And Australia's had this running problem the last, 3 years, where they realised the way the Constitution is worded about your allegiance to foreign powers, as in if you're a dual citizen, a huge number of people in the Parliament, both in the lower and upper house, weren't eligible to be there. It was absolutely ridiculous. People were dropping like 9 pins. It started in the Senate, but there was some in the lower house as well. And this happened to Pauline Hanson's One Nation. They had 2 senators, Hanson herself and this absolute gimp called Malcolm Roberts. And I think he's worse than Pauline Hanson. That's how bad he was. Now, he got caught up in the citizenship thing and he had to leave the Senate. Now, the next person on the One Nation ticket was Fraser Anning. And so he automatically stepped up. But apparently he and Pauline Hanson had already fallen out. So the same day or day after he got sworn in as a One Nation senator, he said, "Oh, to hell with One Nation. I resign. I'm independent." And you can do that. You can be there, and it's not on your own merits whatsoever. It's on a party's merits. But you can resign and keep the Senate, which I think is a complete scam. But anyway, so then he was an independent senator. And in his first speech as an independent senator, it was just all racism, xenophobia. And he literally used the Nazi language of calling for a final solution for the Muslim problem. And some government pieces.
I would have done if I still had a Twitter account. I was going to put out that the people of Queensland finally found a final solution to the Fraser Anning problem. Yeah,
just don't vote for him. But he ended up being so extreme. Some people defended him and said, "Oh, I said that accidentally." No, it was. We now know beyond doubt, because of his subsequent statements, he is being fed Nazi ideology and language and talking points and using them deliberately. But he ended up being too extreme for every other conservative racist in Australia, and they all disowned him. Bob Katter was supporting him for a while, but then he said shit that was too extreme for Bob Katter. So he's basically just said a whole bunch of racist crap, and he doubled down and tripled down, and he had a rally that was filled with people who were known to be actual Nazis, like people who have swastika tattoos, who have openly praised Hitler and are guilty of multiple sort of public affrays with people.
This is what you lefties do. A man can't have a swastika tattoo and openly praise Hitler without being called a Nazi. You just call everyone a Nazi.
Exactly. That's why you get these people who say, "Oh, you call everyone a Nazi." No, I actually limit it to the people who promote Nazi ideology, who have praised Hitler, who have parties on Hitler's birthday. That's who I call Nazis. And while he was at this rally fucking full of Nazis, young Egg Boy stepped up and just splattered an egg on the back of his head, which is hilarious. Then all these Nazi thugs crash tackled this kid.
Wasn't that directly in response to his literally blaming the recently murdered Muslims at the mosques in New Zealand, wasn't it?
Yeah, he literally said the people who were murdered in that terrorist attack in New Zealand brought it on themselves by dint of being Muslim. It's because...
but by dint of being there. They were there, therefore they got murdered. What the fuck kind of... I mean, obviously it's racist and disgusting, but what kind of logic is that as well? Everyone who gets murdered is there. Like, it's stupid. Fuck's sake.
Yeah, but people like him try to say that more subtly, but he just straight up said, Muslims are unacceptable, so of course Muslims being there mean they're going to get murdered, because decent non-Muslim people shouldn't have to put up with Muslims. That's what he was saying. And he just said it point blank. Most of the people like him dance around it, but he just said it. And it was like...
They usually they try and keep a thin veneer of like plausible deniability. He just went full up. No, they're not blameless. Literally, they've just been murdered, but they're not blameless, apparently. I don't know how that works. And as you can see from my avatar, that's why I'm backing Egg Boy for Prime Minister in 2022. Definitely. Yeah. I don't even know if he's going to be old enough to be eligible, but I'm backing him nonetheless.
By 2022, I think because he's like 16 or something, so he'd be eligible for Parliament. I think you only have to be 18 to run for Parliament. But yeah, I think by 2022 he could. But but all during the campaign, Anning just kept saying more and more extreme shit. Like he even dodged just saying, I don't want any more Muslim immigration, which was what Pauline Hanson said. He just said, I'm going to ban black immigration to Australia.
Christ almighty.
He just straight out said it.
Fucking hell. I mean, in one way, you have to say, okay, at least that's more honest. But, I mean, still fucking appalling. What wanker talks like that, really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so he went down in flames, but he was clear. He was doubling down and tripling down. Like, I'm going to see how far I can ride this, and because the people, like I said, the people who are in his camp are known Nazis, are known advocates of Nazi ideology.
Yes, and I asked you in one of your live streams for your top 5 who you wanted to go down in the election.
Yeah,
and you got 2, was pretty good. You got Fraser Anning. And then former Prime Minister Tony Abbott as well.
Oh my God, that was the one bright spot. That was the one bright spot on the night, because he got smashed. He didn't just lose; he really got smashed.
Actually, it's not just that he got smashed; it's where he got. Like, it's amazing. He lost to the independent candidate and Olympic bronze medal winning skier. I didn't know that about her, Zolly Stegel, in his now former seat of Warringah in New South Wales, which he had held since '94, and which the Liberal Conservatives had held since 1922.
Yep. It was really an historic occasion. Yes.
Yeah. So that's again positives. I mean, I know I'm looking for a gem in a mountain of shit here, but that is a gem.
I know that was my one celebratory drink. I was doing an election live stream. My one celebratory drink was him getting smashed. Oh yeah, there was about half a dozen things I wanted to happen, and I got one of them on the night. So yeah.
I'm talking about people with dual nationality. Of course, he was born in London, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a 10 Bob Pom. There was an immigration policy post World War II trying to get people from the UK to emigrate to Australia. And I think the fare on a boat to come out to Australia was like cheaper than a train ticket on the underground.
Yeah, the Bee Gees were £10 poms as well, weren't they?
I think so. Yeah. So there was
they wanted to import white people. Let's be just
yeah. Because we did post World War II. We did get a lot of immigrants from Central Europe, who are basically white people, but they don't speak English. A lot of people from the Mediterranean, Italy, Greece, and from Central Europe.
Croatia, I believe, as well.
Yes, a lot of people from, well, yeah, all the countries in that area, the Serbs, Croatians, a lot of immigrants from that area post World War II. They were basically refugees, obviously, and they were put in resettlement camps for a while, but then they became vibrant members of the community. But yeah, the 10 Bob Pom thing was, oh God, let's try and get some more English-speaking white people here.
So basically, what I find so amazing about that is it worked for both governments. The British government wanted to get rid of poor people, which they did in their thousands, and the Australians just wanted to import some white people.
No, it worked for both. Yeah,
the human beings we're talking about.
But it's even like the original colony, like the joke about we're all criminals. It worked for both. I mean, there was an overpopulation of poor and imprisoned people. Like, they notoriously had the prison hulks on the Thames because they didn't have old ships full of criminals because they didn't have enough prison space for them. Both won, the England won by getting rid of poor and criminal people, and the setting up of the colony was boosted by the influx of expendable labour. But, it didn't matter if a lot of them died in transit. A lot of them died building the colony because they were cheap, expendable, and replaceable. So,
well, and of course, talking about the crushing of labour of trade unions. Of course, I mean, I regularly attend the Tolpuddle Martyrs Festival in the shitty little town in Devon called Tolpuddle, where the first ever trade union was set up, and the people who set it up were sent to Australia as criminals.
Yeah. And look, I've also got to throw it out there for anyone, and Australians find this hilarious, that people from other countries try and do the "you're all criminals" thing as an insult, like it's going to upset us. It doesn't. Most people really are excited to find out if there were any major criminals in their family bloodline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exciting because most people here are like, "Oh, your great grandfather was a grocer." Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's very boring. No offense to him. It's boring.
No, but yeah, it's boring. My other half, she got really into researching genealogy, like, through those various websites that help you do it. And she did her family for a couple hundred years. She's actually born in England. And then she's going, "Oh, can I research yours?" And I went, "Yep, I knew a few," and said, "Start here." And she went, and she found, I think it was on my mum's side, my ancestors, it was these three brothers who were highwaymen. They used to rob stagecoaches together, and they all got caught and they all got transported. And they set up near where I grew up in country Western New South Wales as graziers, and they became pillars of the community. It's hysterical. Like, they're hardcore criminals, like a family of criminals. They all get transported, and out here they're pillars of the community. It was bloody hysterical as far as I was concerned.
Well, Australia is known as a place that it's calming. It's a soothing place.
Yeah. It's like, oh wow, it's like they set up farms. I actually grew up in a town called Dubbo, and they're a bit further away. All the towns have great names, like West Wyalong and Yamundry and whatnot. I think they were near West Wyalong. But they set up farms and became hugely successful, and they were pillars of the community. They used to be incredibly violent criminals, and then they became pillars of the community.
As you do, yeah. And actually, talking about the town names, looking at some of the election results, and some of the town names are amazing. I don't even know how to pronounce some of them. Incredible.
Oh yeah, we have. There's two ways town names go in Australia. Either it's just named after somewhere in England, or they've had a go at naming it after an Indigenous word. You get places like Woolloomooloo and Wollongong and Grong and Dubbo, where I grew up. So they're either named after someone or something from England, or they've gone with trying to go with an Indigenous name. So yeah.
Yeah, and I always imagine that it's the indigenous name actually isn't anything like the real indigenous name. It's just like a white man's version of what the indigenous name was supposed to be.
Yeah, well, yeah. For instance, yeah, people end up not knowing because where I grew up, the town was called Dubbo, and no one knows exactly what it means. You know, because they sort of chased off and murdered a lot of the indigenous people. The theory I had growing up is that it meant red earth because you do get this really red earth out in Western New South Wales. But then, you know, some people did some more research and they go, oh, maybe it means that. But there's also a ceremonial head covering that in this area was called a tubbo. And it might have been that because this settler's hut was the same sort of shape as this conical headgear. And so it's basically come down to, yeah, someone latched onto an indigenous word and said, we'll call it that. And then a generation goes past and they say to the indigenous person, means this, doesn't it? And they're just looking at me, what the hell are you talking about? I don't know what that word is. What are you saying?
Fair enough.
Like the spurious story about kangaroo meaning I don't know. It's not actually true, but it's a funny story that an early settler pointed at the kangaroo and asked an indigenous person, what's that called? And they said kangaroo. And so, okay, kangaroo. And then 10 years later, they go kangaroo. And an indigenous person says, why are you saying you don't know what that is? And they go, no, that's what you call it. He goes, no, kangaroo means I don't know. That's not actually true, but it's a funny story.
Indeed. Although I still marvel at the being called New South Wales, because I've been to Old South Wales and it's fuck all like New South Wales.
Yeah,
like, South Wales seems really warm and pleasant, whereas Old South Wales is cold and shit.
It was a weird one to go with, quite honestly. Set up the colony and what do we call it? This is nothing like home, so I'd like to call it New South Wales. And they go, yeah, that makes perfect sense, buddy. Yeah.
I also think it's overkill that there's Victoria and Queensland.
Yeah, yeah. But they loved the Royals. The early Australian governments loved the Royals.
Fair enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, my government's collapsing, so that's fun.
Oh my God, you are getting Prime Minister Boris Johnson. I'm putting money on it now.
Yeah, and I think I'm take a sweepstake in the audience. Where should I emigrate to if that does happen?
God, Boris Johnson, but who else could it be? Honestly, Jacob Rees. Jesus.
No, Jacob Rees-Mogg. No, he won't. He definitely won't get in because the way it's structured, it's slightly complicated. Everyone puts their hat. Everyone who wants to run for the Tory leadership puts their name into the hat, and the entirety of the Conservative members of Parliament, of which there are like 320 or whatever at the moment, get to vote on who they want as their candidate. And then the one who gets the least amount of votes gets fucked off out, and then those votes become free, and they can re-vote for whoever else they want to vote for. And eventually they whittle it down via that process of the one who's least gets dropped off the list, and those votes get, recast, so to speak, until they get to a final two. And then those final two go to a vote of the Conservative members across the whole country. Yeah. So the point is, a lot of the Conservative Party in the British Parliament despise Boris Johnson for various reasons, many of which are
really good reasons.
Yeah, but some of them are just petty personal shit. But whatever, they don't like him. He's massively favoured by the Tory by the Tory membership. So if he gets to the final two, I've no doubt he'll become Prime Minister. But the point is, he could be scuppered by not being popular enough in the Conservative Party parliamentary party. To be able to get to the final two. So that might be the one saving grace. But the problem is, whoever gets in, I mean, they're all fucking pricks. So, I mean, it's not going to be anyone good regardless. But I just hope it isn't. There are some who are less objectionable, who I could maybe stomach, but,
Yeah, well, like my mate, Frank, who has done a lot of stuff for my channel, Frankie the Skin, he's an old school Tory, loves Thatcher and whatnot. And he's going like, there's about two I can stomach. he definitely still votes Tory, but he looks at it and goes, of the people who keep popping up and talking like he can't stand Boris Johnson or any other. But he says, yeah, there's about two who I still think have any sort of integrity. And that's from a Tory supporter, looks at them and goes, there's honestly only about two of them I can actively support.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great, but there we go. I mean, and there should be it's disgusting to me. Although obviously in Australia you've been very used to it over the last few years. When someone leaves office as the supposed, at least de facto head of state, if not actual head of state, there should be a general election because no one put you into that position. The party put you into that position.
Yes.
It's disgusting to me, and that's going to happen again now. It seems. So.
Yeah. I don't know, how the rules of no confidence are. That'd be. Let's put it out there, actually, because I think UK politics is a bit too complicated for me to follow from a distance, because certainly the way the media reports it is so contradictory. If there were a general election, honestly, which way do you think it would go?
The problem I have with this is the Brexit impasse, because there's no overall majority for anyone and they can't decide. I don't think you'd end up in a much different situation than you currently have. I think it would still be a hung parliament. Although the one wild card we now have that we didn't have not last year, the 2017, was the Brexit party, Nigel Farage's new fucking crew, UKIP 2.0. Who would undoubtedly leach votes from both of the major parties, but mostly from the Tories. So it's not impossible that because they don't have the party infrastructure across the country, the Brexit party wouldn't win many seats, but they'd scupper the Tories enough that the Labour Party could win enough to get a majority, albeit a slim one. And then, but the problem is then Jeremy Corbyn's got a problem because all of his life has been anti-EU. But from like an old school leftist point of view of he wants like protectionist economic policies, which the EU are obviously very much against. But he's in control of a party which is very, very pro-EU. And so he's been having to sort of tread a real like fucking balancing act, a fine line all the way through, to the point where in this recent EU elections, which happened yesterday, Thursday, whatever, essentially he was saying we're both pro-Remain and pro-Leave. Like it was so speaking out of two sides of your mouth sort of thing. But if he became Prime Minister, he'd have to actually take decisions. He couldn't like fudge the situation any longer. He'd have to actually do something.
But this is what I find confusing, because it's obvious Corbyn is not a fan of the EU for old school lefty reasons. But I've also seen reports of, some Labour MPs saying if you don't strongly go pro-EU, like anti-Brexit, you're scuppered. But then other Labour MPs saying, well, my constituency voted for Brexit, so I can't go against it. So if Corbyn speaks out against Brexit, I'm going to rebel. And he might be speaking out both sides of his mouth, but the bloody parliamentary MPs seem to be wanting it both ways as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all of the parties have this issue. Well, both of the major parties that have any chance of forming a government have this problem where there are lots of them that are pro-Remain, lots of them that are pro-Leave, and the country is so split that you have parts of the north which are traditionally Labour, which voted to leave. Now, they're going to stay Labour as long as the Labour Party doesn't completely fuck things up. But there are enough seats that are contestable where if they go strongly one way or the other, they'll lose to the Tories or they'll lose to either the Brexit Party or like the Lib Dems or whatever. So they really are on a real balancing act. And the problem that I think you've just seen in Australia and that we would see here in any general election is that the right aren't held back by like scruples. They can play like the immigrant card or the taxation card or the Jeremy Corbyn's a commie card or whatever fucking bullshit. So they can appeal to people's baser instincts and get past their equivalent balancing act in some respects. But I think if there was a general election, the polls are quite favourable for Labour in many respects, and the Conservative Party are in no fucking position to fight a general election. They're in absolute fucking disarray. Which is probably why it won't happen ultimately. But I still think you'd end up in a situation with a hung parliament, and so you'd still be in exactly the same situation, but you'd have had, you'd have spent another 50 million quid on a general election as well. Brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, did I read those recent election results wrong, or did the Lib Dems do surprisingly well?
The Lib Dems did very, very well, actually, yeah. And the Green Party. This is the thing. The recent, you were on about the local elections, the council elections. Tories were devastated. They lost 1,600 seats, which is basically unprecedented. UKIP got wiped out, which is unsurprising. The difference is the Brexit Party weren't running in those elections, so they really obviously weren't a factor. So everyone was like, the people are revolting because they want the Brexit to happen. They're sick of Brexit not happening. And yet the two parties which did overwhelmingly brilliantly were the Lib Dems and the Green Party, both of which want to just basically revoke Article 50 and remain in the EU. So it's the country's in such a weird state where I've never had seen it so divided in terms of politics. Obviously, Northern Ireland aside, that's a slightly different matter. The mainland, I've never seen it as so divided and so completely fucked right now. I don't know, and I don't know how we get through it in any kind of peaceable way. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's what people say to me. Well, you asked me, what should Labor do the next 3 years? Yeah, at the moment, I have no fucking idea what would work to turn things around. All I can think is, some actual strong, decisive leadership, some defined policy, rather than equivocating and dancing around the edge and not wanting to upset too many people. But you see the division everywhere. It's like, well, how the hell do you fix that? Because it's not an easy thing to ask.
Yeah. So it's everywhere. I was thinking about this. Everywhere in the English-speaking world, the politics is fucked, except New Zealand.
Yeah, they're doing okay at the moment. Yeah.
Ardern seems nice. I mean, obviously they had the attack, but I mean that's not really political in the straightforward sense. The actual politics seemed pretty set, and they had that setback, and they got together and went, "Should we pass some gun laws?" Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
look, they actually got shit done, and you think, well, I mean, if they can do it, what the fuck's wrong with everyone else? Come on now, people.
Yeah. But it's also a very nice country. When I had a holiday there, I thought, this is where you come to retreat when the apocalypse happens. New Zealand would probably survive most disasters, and there's lots of wildlife there that you can catch.
Yeah, I mean, I would go there, but it's quite far away. Like, I'm slightly annoyed I have to get up to go for a piss. So going to New Zealand, that's a long way away,
Yes, and that's also why it's likely to survive any truly horrible events that happen, because of its isolation. But
and I don't know, I'd be adding, because I did one silly joke in one video once, which was specifically meant just to annoy two people, and neither of them noticed until I put it in there, until I told them. I did an episode of the Certain Manosphere about, they had actually in Queensland, on the Gold Coast, they had the International Conference on Men's Issues in 2017 or whatever, and so I did a skit about silly place names in Australia, like Chinaman's Knob and Egg and Bacon Bay and stuff. And so at the end sequence was like shots of those images of those place names with how far away from the Gold Coast they were, and some of them were zooming in and zooming out. And so one of them had, because it was on the East Coast, New Zealand was also in the shot, right? So I put, above New Zealand, I just put the word fuck. So it said fuck New Zealand. And that was just to annoy two New Zealand friends, and neither of them fucking noticed. Brilliant. So, yeah. But I've got nothing against New Zealand. I just wanted to annoy two particular Kiwis.
Yeah. As you do. Yes. Yeah. But,
that's the mind of the creative genius behind the Kevin Logan channel. And that's why I'm as big as fucking PewDiePie.
Damn straight. Yeah. Oh my God. Sorry, I did again. As soon as I think of, because I hang out on some Facebook groups for YouTubers to talk and support each other and whatnot, and people are like, how do I grow? I say, I don't know. When I look and see the biggest YouTubes in the the world being just unmitigated piles of shit. I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to grow, be a fucking cunt. Like, you'll probably grow. Yeah, and YouTube won't punish you. YouTube, like, I've seen videos on the fucking the Jewish question, which are still monetized. Like,
Yeah.
I've had cat videos demonetized. What the fuck is going on?
Yeah. No. It's bizarre. What I always say is the best thing about the internet is also the worst thing about the internet. Best thing is anyone can get on and have their voice heard. Yes. Bad thing is anyone can get on and have their voice heard. It's just and the social media platforms are maybe slowly growing out of it, but they chased engagement over everything, and controversy and bigotry generates engagement. So the social media sites flourished because of outright Nazis, anti-Semites, bigots, hate mongers, because it generated engagement, and that's all they cared about. And now it's like, oh wait, possibly we bear some responsibility for truly shitty things happening. Oh gosh, maybe engagement at all costs is actually bad.
Yes, indeed. Although one theory which has always stuck with me, which I think is absolutely true, is that I don't think, like, people will say, and they said the same thing about TV to a degree, but they said, oh, the internet's making people stupid, or making people more extreme. And I don't think that's actually necessarily true, in the sense that I don't think people are any more hateful or stupid than they always were. It's just that every hateful, stupid arsehole can get a webcam for, next to nothing, and upload their stupid, irrational, ill-informed garbage to the internet. And so, what's the crazy guy at the bus stop who tell you about the Jews and the blacks are going to come and steal your babies or whatever? Is now 100,000 subscribers on YouTube or something. Yeah.
And I mean, as I say, I grew up in a country area, and when I grew up, it was very easy to feel isolated. I'm the only one who feels this way. It's like, like, I'm the only gay kid in town. I'm the only non-white kid in town. It's very easy to feel completely alienated. Now, the joy of the internet, you can find a community and connect with them, and that's fantastic. But even forgetting the bigots, if you're a nutter who's into the concept of the fields of the Nephilim, you believe there is a secret valley between the mountains in Europe where giants live, you will find people who agree with you. And it's just like, nutters used to be lone nutters, but now, like, flat earthers are all aggregating.
I was literally about to say flat earth, yeah. Because I always, when I was growing up in the kind of, I suppose technically the internet existed, but it wasn't like no one had the fucking internet. The Flat Earth Society was like, I thought it was just like one of these quaint kind of silly jokes where eccentric posh people got together and talked shit over brandy or something, like just some silly nonsense. But they didn't actually believe the earth was flat. That was the main thing, because obviously it's fucking not, right?
Yeah.
But now there are like actual people who are making documentaries saying, oh yeah, the earth's flat.
Yeah.
What? No, it isn't. What are you doing? And there are celebrities coming out and saying, yeah, maybe the earth's flat. What the fuck is wrong with you? What?
Yeah. There are definitely people in those online flat earth communities who are trolls, who are taking the piss and winding them up. But there's a huge number of them who are completely sincere.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've talked to several of them. And you get obviously the Alex Jones types, the 9/11 truthers and things. Although my favourite, this is an amazing piece of, this is like taking crazy and then adding crazy fucking craziness to it. Are you aware of one of the newer 9/11 conspiracies? The no planers.
Oh wow! I had not heard anyone say that.
Yeah, this is their thing. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, how could there have been no planes? You saw planes go into those buildings. No, you didn't. You saw holograms go into those buildings. And what actually blew them up was, and I swear to God, death laser from space.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Now, I can't help but feel that someone took hallucinogenics and watched fucking Star Wars and thought it was a documentary, perhaps. I don't know. But it literally, it was like the US government were testing a laser weapon on their own city in the most high-profile place in the world, somehow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I remember back in the early days, like the Pentagon, there were people who said it wasn't a plane that hit the Pentagon, it was a missile. And they coming up with these shit, stupid explanations as to why. Like the hole in the Pentagon didn't look like a plane. It's going like, how strong do you think plane wings are? If a plane hits a reinforced building, the wings are just gonna fucking snap off. You're not going to see you're not going to see a wing-shaped hole because the building is stronger than the plane wings. But
this is where it can get dangerous. Because I remember when I was a kid, I was a kid, an adult technically. I was taken in by. Do you remember the Loose Change, the 9/11 documentary?
Oh, that was the original one, more or less.
Yeah. I was taken in by that bullshit when I was younger. I'm not particularly proud to say, but I finally looked it up and went, oh yeah, the things they're saying are fucking bullshit. Thank you for explaining this to me. You know,
as the thing is, if you say things confidently and frame them in a way, because that was framed like a documentary, like the news. People are used to accepting that the news, that documentaries are by and large an attempt to be honest. But when someone does that and they use that framing, but they're deceitful from the get-go, if you're not a naturally suspicious person, you go, well, he says that. He wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. My God, that sounds good. But it's like, yeah, everything that guy said was complete horseshit.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that bombshell, I suppose. Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Oh gosh, what? Yes. Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. Because yes, having seen, as I said, the incredibly unlikely events of Trump, Brexit, and this Australian election, nothing's a sure thing. If you care about things in the world, and this is, look, there's two reasons I do YouTube stuff: to have fun and to hopefully communicate things to people, give them a voice they might not hear otherwise. If you care about things, if you care about issues, just voting isn't enough. You have to reach other people. You have to be an activist. You have to talk, even if it's just to your own circle, and just say, if you want to see change, you have to talk to people and say, hey, this is all sorts of bullshit. Wouldn't this be better? So I'm still trying to be positive, but I think if you don't like the way things are running, you can't just say voting doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. No, reaching other people is what it is. So, I'll continue to try and communicate with people and say, look, here's an issue that I think is important. This is why. And I hope that you might take this into consideration. So yeah, what was the old thing? Agitate, educate, organize. Even though that was how we're going to make the Black Nation rise, but
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be in that context. I think it's a good mantra nonetheless. Absolutely, and a good, positive, hopeful note to end on.
Yes, so that's our future, people. Agitate, educate, organize. And people ask me, why do I have so much booze? Because I like making cocktails. I do not drink all the booze all the time. I drink some of the booze some of the time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. For those who don't know, I've left a link to AngryAussie's stuff, YouTube and social media. Go and check him out. But especially he does live streams. What day do you? Thursdays, does it usually do?
Tuesdays and Thursdays, my time usually. So if you're in another part of the world, you'll have to work out the time. It's like usually 8 to 10 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, Eastern Australian time. If you're somewhere else and you're interested, you'll have to work out what the time difference is.
Well, it's 9 here, so 8 p.m. would be, oh Jesus, hang on,
early in the morning.
Yeah, early in the morning, which means it's like really, really early in the morning in America. Anyway,
Yeah,
the point being,
I get
yeah, you can,
insomnia from America joining in.
yes, and you can see AngryAussie making cocktails whilst talking, putting the
Yeah.
world to right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, I really like cocktails, so I have to have a lot of different ingredients to make different cocktails. And
Yes.
every now and then I think stop buying booze, but then I see something on a shelf that I don't have, and I went, that'd be cool. I should get that. And so I end up with this. It took like a couple of years to build up a collection like this.
Yeah, and I saw you making a bitter liberal, which doesn't make any sense in Australia.
Yeah, well, I was hoping that the Liberals would lose and they would be bitter, and so I had it written down. But then, so yeah, I wanted to try it. So the other night, I decided it's a bit of small L Liberal, me being bitter at the election results.
Fair enough. Yeah. So you go and check it. I mean, you do obviously proper set piece videos as well, but you also do your live stream, you interactive, and all that jazz.
Yes.
So go and check out AngryAussie's stuff if you want some good political stuff and some occasionally atheist stuff, but without the bigotry. Yay! Which is always universal, unfortunately. But there we go.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, thanks for joining us to talk us through the Australian election. Hopefully things improve, but we're not hopeful, are we?
No, well, we got 3 years of dealing with this, so I still don't know what the next 3 years will bring, but it will be interesting times, as the saying goes.
Indeed. And thank you to everyone in the chat, even though you appear to be talking about the American presidential situation. So thanks for engaging in the conversation we weren't having. That my audience do this. They always talk amongst themselves. I don't know why they're here. There we go. But thank you nonetheless, everyone. And I'll see you. Actually, well, I might as well plug it to now. I'm going to be talking. I'm doing exotic general elections this weekend. I'm talking with some Indians about the Indian general election on this channel at 4 p.m. UK time, which is 9:30 p.m. Indian summer time or standard time, whatever it is, IST. And yeah, join us to talk about the Indian general election, which is even more fucking complicated than the Australian one.
Yeah. How many hours from now is that?
It's 4 p.m. UK time, so 13 and a half hours from now.
13 and a half. Okay, now I'm going to be in bed.
It's difficult. I had to do it at a time because one of the people is in California, so I had to do it where it's like the middle of the day.
Okay.
And then quite late for the Indians in India, so yeah it's complicated.
Okay. All right.
So, but yeah, join me for that and go and check out AngryAussie's stuff. Otherwise, the Great Barrier Reef will kill you. Yeah, I said it. I don't know what the fuck that means. Anyway, bye.
Bye.